Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Tabbins. I'm the MPP for Toronto-Danforth. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We've waited a few minutes for people to come on board. We have a pretty substantial audience now. I think we'll get rolling, and I'll go through all of the things necessary to get this show on the road. Again, I'm Peter Tabbins. I'm the MPP for Toronto-Danforth. This community home retrofit webinar is going to, I hope, give you some insight into what's been going on here in Toronto-Danforth in the Pocket neighborhood with community-driven energy conservation retrofits, a response to the climate crisis, and I hope will inspire many people across the city to take up this kind of activity because, frankly, we need to have it happen. I'm going to go first to our land acknowledgement, and then I'll go on with a few more points. We acknowledge we're hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. And I like to add that although I think it's a good thing to make the land acknowledgement, that I think it's also very important to actually concretely engage in getting the truth out and reconciling with First Nations so we actually correct the wrongs of the past. The purpose of this meeting, tonight we're going to have an opportunity to hear from two speakers who are very engaged with the pocket change model for home retrofits in a local Toronto neighborhood, frankly, in Toronto-Danforth. You'll hear about their successes, what they've learned, and what the challenges are of this model. I'm very fortunate to be the MPP in Toronto-Danforth, and the neighborhood at the center of this work as well, very, very close to my office. In fact, I just go out on the Danforth, go south about a block, and I'm in the middle of the pocket. I know that many of you have been inspired by the work that's been done on this project. They've admired what's going on. And I hope, again, as I've said earlier, that many of you will be motivated to start organizing in your community. And if you're in the pocket and haven't already joined in with this activity, I hope that you actually take the opportunity now to join in. In terms of participants posing questions, please use the Q&A function. We will not be using the raise hand feature or the chat features. We'll be monitoring Q&A, and at the beginning of this whole presentation, we're going to have a PowerPoint outline of what's going on, and then I'll be taking questions and answers and comments and posing them to our panelists. So a very simple agenda. I'm going to introduce the panelists. They'll be making their presentation with PowerPoint. We'll have questions and commentary from you, the participants, and then we'll have closing comments and information. So I am very, very pleased to introduce our two panelists, very capable people I had the opportunity to know before, but had never actually gone through their backgrounds before, and I was very impressed. Paul, Eve, you've done a lot. So I'll start with Paul. Paul Dowsett is a retrofit coach and executive member of the Pocket Change Project. He's the principal architect, Sustainable Architecture for a Healthy Planet. Paul's the principal architect at Sustainable, has been central to the mainstreaming of sustainable architecture in Canada while practicing deep community engagement with equity-seeking groups of all backgrounds and abilities. Paul's work consistently demonstrates the value of building science-led design solutions for new construction and retrofits. He's a key advisor to governments and other stakeholders in the space of residential retrofits in Canada and a co-founder of the Ontario Net Zero Architects Network. Paul's own home was one of the first deep energy retrofits in the pocket. This early retrofit work reduces energy use to 48% less than that required for a typical Canadian home, achieving net positive cost of energy. His firm later retrofitted a very similar home, achieving the first ever LEED for Homes Platinum certification for a residential renovation in Canada and achieving an 83% reduction in energy use. Paul has recently completely electrified his home by upgrading to a cold climate air source heat pump and induction appliances. He's proud to be natural gas free. Paul, welcome. That is quite something. Eve, you're a pretty strong panelist on your own right. You're project manager, Pocket Change Retrofit Project, retired from senior management at Go Transit Metrolinx, Eve's a civil engineer with extensive experience in strategic leadership, project management, and collaborative problem solving. Motivated by a longstanding concern about climate change, she's currently devoting her time to results-oriented projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Eve was an early air source heat pump adopter. Over the past 3 winters of heating comfort, her hybrid air source heat pump has reduced greenhouse gas emissions from her home by over 60%. My admiration goes out to both of you, not just for talking about what needs to be done, but actually doing it. And with that, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the presentation that is going to be the first major piece of this evening's webinar. Paul.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you so much for those kind introductions for both Eve and I. Boy, it certainly explains why I'm so tired. I now understand that. Thank you so much for hosting this webinar this evening. Thank you so much, Peter. We very much appreciate it. So, Julia, if you're able to share screen and put up the PowerPoint, that would be most appreciated. And I'll see if I can talk over that while we're waiting. There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much, Julia. Yeah, so we're here to explain to you this evening a little bit about the pocket change experience and what we've learned along the way about home energy and greenhouse gas emissions retrofits. So this photo here is a group of our, oh, sorry, I was just going to talk about that. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, this photo here is a group of our pocket change makers actually gathered in my backyard last December. We had scheduled a get together, and what was most fortuitous was that was the first day that my house was completely heated without natural gas. So, and we survived the rest of the winter, so all good. Julia, next slide, please. Yeah, so for today's presentation, we're going to cover 4 chapters. First up, why are home retrofits important? Yeah, like why do we need to do this? Why do we want to talk about this? Why do we want to convince you to do it? We're going to share with you 4 homeowner stories of people who have done this. Now, the 4 stories we're going to share with you are 4 individual homes that have done things in different ways. They've achieved similar results, they've just gone about it differently. So you'll be able to see some of the different strategies you can employ. There's not just one way to do this. We will talk about the pocket change retrofits, the work that we've done to date, and where we're going from here. We never sit still, rest on our laurels. We keep going, keep expanding, and then we'll end off with some tips for homeowners just like you, so that you can understand some things that you may be able to do with your homes as well. Next slide, please, Julia. So first up, why is this important? Why would we want to retrofit to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, especially from our single family homes? So the reason is quite simple. We all know that our gas guzzling cars are not good for the planet, and your home is about equivalent. Those tons of greenhouse gas emissions that come out of your car are about the same as come out of your home. And our single family homes contribute a full 17% of the City of Toronto's total greenhouse gas emissions. That is a significant number. And only we as the homeowners can do anything about that. So we need to. The City of Toronto's Transform TO goal is to reduce the city's greenhouse gas emissions from a 2008 baseline, whatever that means, levels for existing buildings. We want to reduce them by 50% by 2030. That's 6.5 years from now. That's not very long. And follow that up 10 years later by 100% reduction of those greenhouse gas emissions. So these emissions from each of Toronto's 422,000 single-family homes must be significantly reduced to meet Toronto's and Canada's emissions goals. Next, please. So first up, first up of the homeowner stories, I'm going to turn it over to Eve. And Eve, you can take it away with Chris's story.
Oh, okay, so as Paul mentioned, we have 4 homeowner stories. They're examples of different situations. Their homes are different, the people are taking different approaches, and you'll get a sense that we've learned over time as these different projects have gone ahead. So Chris is our first story, and he was really a pioneer. He chose over a decade ago to undertake this on his own. And his main reason was to address the cost of energy for his house, to get it more predictable and more stable. And so over the past 12 years, each year he chose something to do, did the research, found the contractor, and moved ahead one step at a time. He did start with an energy audit because he needed that to get rebates, and also he found it was useful as a bit of a plan. And for each of these homeowner stories, you'll find on the Pocket Change Project website, there is a homeowner story. In this case of Chris, there's an actual video walking through his home. Next, Julia. So Chris is one of the things that we've heard from many homeowners is that their house is more quiet and peaceful and comfortable, that the insulation in particular makes the house quieter, and that once they've installed an air source heat pump, that the temperature is more stable and more comfortable. There's less fluctuation that you get with a gas furnace. And he has peace of mind about the future of the cost of heating his house. And of course, he's very proud of the impact that this has had, and of the work that he's been able to accomplish in his home, which is now off the gas. His advice is that he wishes that he'd had resources to help him with the learning that could have speeded up the process for him and reduced the amount of effort that he personally had to put into it. And so he recommends using neighborhood groups or other expertise to help out, and also to vet energy auditors, contractors, or other people that you're working with, because not all of them are knowledgeable or really committed to low or no carbon solutions. And many do try and suggest other options instead. Paul?
Thanks, Eve. Next story is a couple of Pocket residents, Susan and David. They took kind of the opposite route that Chris took. They installed their heat pump first and then turned around and started improving the structure of their home to make it more airtight and better insulated. Their motivation, first and foremost, was to combat climate change. And secondly, but a very close second, their gas furnace was old and condemned by Enbridge, and they knew they weren't going to be able to make it through another winter with that old gas furnace. Their house is a typical 1920s double wide structural brick house, very common in old Toronto. One unique circumstance of their house was that they had no room on either side of it to put exterior insulation. You can see in the image on the right, just how close to the neighbor they are. And although there looks like there's a lot of space on the right-hand side of the image, there's a city-owned lane right there. So, they couldn't even add it. They couldn't even add an inch to that side of the house. So they received an energy audit, and they got a roadmap to go with that, a very, very useful roadmap that told them what they needed to do. And for their heat pump, in order to size it properly, they also got a heat loss calculation done. It's very important to size heat pumps properly, to not just go by an installer's rule of thumb, well, I'll size this based on the size of your house. That doesn't work as well for heat pumps. Heat pumps are a little more precise than that. So getting a heat loss calculation is very important. And there is a story about this, slides of the process that they did that you can also check out on the Pocket Change website, part 1 of something. We get a little peek into it on this slide. As we said, they arranged for the cold climate air source heat pump to be installed first. They got off the gas right from the start, and then they turned around and they looked at their house and they and they saw what they could do over time themselves. So, they started with the bedroom that was out over the front porch, kind of the coldest room in the house. They stripped it back to the brick. They added interior air sealing. They then added insulation and the vapor barrier to that, and then the drywall. And now they've got a freshly painted room up there, and they've gone through a winter with that room in its new condition. That is their bedroom, and they were amazed at how much more comfortable that room is, for the first winter in about 25 years that they've lived in the house. Next one. So they do plan to continue with the rest of the house now that the heat pump is installed. They'll do these changes room by room. They'll make each room better. They'll do this as their budget and their ability to do the work themselves permits. They'll look at the walls, the windows and doors. They'll insulate the roof. They're looking to install solar panels on their roof and also to retrofit their back extension. It's very typical of Toronto homes, has that sort of summer kitchen that was converted from a back porch that was never really properly air sealed or insulated. So they're going to look at that. Their advice is very clearly, do not wait until your furnace dies. We all know that our furnaces do not die in June. Our furnaces die in February, and then you're really under pressure. So make a plan to switch for a heat pump, but make that plan in June. Don't make that plan in February when you're under the gun. And of course, improve your house as you're able as you go along.
This next story, I think Wendy would agree that theirs was an unexpected retrofit. They had an older furnace and it died in around Christmas time or New Year's, so it was quite cold at the time. They also live in a 1920s solid brick house. It had been somewhat renovated, but not in a very energy efficient way. They had plans to do some further renovations to suit their needs. And so once the furnace died, the question was, should we go ahead and put in a heat pump and deal with that, or do we have to do the energy saving renovations first? So they got an energy audit and consulted with an expert as part of their roadmap. They got the heat loss calculation for their air source heat pump and determined that yes, they could put the air source heat pump into their home without doing any further insulation. So they ordered the cold climate air source heat pump. This was during the pandemic. There were supply chain issues. They had to wait a number of weeks for the heat pump to come in. They got changed from one manufacturer to another. They borrowed space heaters from all their friends in order to keep the house warm during this time. But eventually it was put in, and they were just amazed at how quiet it is. And it has been doing the job for them. And they still plan to go ahead with the further renovations, but they can do it now on their own time. Next. So Wendy's suggestion, like David and Susan, don't wait until your furnace dies and you're under pressure. They have lived through that experience. And her message particularly is, even when you're under pressure, it's important to make the choice that you want to live with for the future and not necessarily go with what might be the easy solution of replacing one gas furnace with another. The words in her story, if we can do it, then so can you.
All right. Well, this is my house that we're talking about now. So, my house is pictured on the lower left. When I moved into this house 27 years ago, you could see daylight through the walls and through the ceilings. It was in that bad condition. So I had to do that, air sealing and insulating and renovating the building envelope of the house. I had to do that more than 20 years ago. And back then, I was really proud to install all gas appliances. I made this an all gas house because then, 20 years ago, that was the carbon clean thing to do. Natural gas was much more clean then than our electricity in Ontario. The upper upper left-hand picture shows the last coal burning electricity plant that was shut down in 2014 in Ontario. So since then, we've had quite carbon clean electricity in Ontario, but not until about 5 years ago did we have non-gas options that were able to heat our houses. That was when these cold climate air source heat pumps started to appear on the market. So I know from the energy audit that I got and the roadmap that I got about my house, I still can improve the air sealing. 20 odd years ago, I didn't know that air sealing was important as I now know it is. And we now have the tools to show us where we need to do the air sealing. So that's part of what comes with the energy audit. Next, please. So the things that I did to get off the gas was I switched my gas boiler to an all-electric air to water cold climate heat pump because I have old cast iron radiators from the original house and more modern radiators in the addition to the house, and I really liked them and wanted to keep them. So now my hot water for showers and all of the heating needs for the radiators are taken care of by the heat pump. I also switched my gas cooktop to an induction stove. I switched my gas dryer to an electric heat pump dryer. And my favorite thing of all, I switched my gas barbecue to a wood pellet barbecue smoker. Wish I had done that years ago. But again, they have just really appeared on the market within, in the last 5 years. So, but I'm very happy with that switch. I also disconnected my gas fireplace, and I am looking at electric options, but not too hard. I might just leave the whole thing disconnected. But I'm really proud to say that my house is now completely off the gas.
So the next part of the presentation is to talk a little bit about what's been happening in the pocket, where these homes are located, and the program that's in place to help pocket homeowners to retrofit their homes. So the pocket is a neighborhood just south of Danforth and east of Jones Avenue between Jones and Greenwood. There are 1,100 homes there and about 3,500 people. It's a little bit unusual because there once was a creek through the middle of it, and now there's the Greenwood TTC yards. And so there's no through streets going through it. And it's got a kind of a feeling of a little bit of a pocket. And so it has quite a cohesive community, and there's been an active pocket community association for nearly 20 years, doing all kinds of things, having parades for Pride Day and Santa Claus parades, and organizing festivals in the park and this kind of thing. So that pocket community association is an important force in the community. The housing stock in the pocket is pretty typical of the older part of Toronto. 90% of the homes are from before World War II. They are different constructions and upgrades. Some of them were built as quite fancy homes, others of them very basic kinds of shelters. Over the years, some of them have been improved more than others. Some of them are heated with hot air systems, and a number of them have water-based hydronic systems with radiators, but 86% of them are heated with gas. And so the GHG emissions from each home average 5 or a little bit more tons per home per year just from the heating.
Thanks, Eve. So the Pocket Change project started in about 2016, I think, and the purpose of it has morphed a little bit over time, but we definitely understand that what we're trying to do is implement a home retrofit program to accelerate the rate of retrofits and greenhouse gas reductions to meet or exceed Toronto's goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from existing buildings, as we said earlier, from 50% by 2030 to 100% by 2040. So we know that we, as homeowners, as a community of homeowners, we can and we must do our part to help the city to reach these goals. Next. So as I said, in 2016 is when we started, and we really started with raising awareness and inspiring a vision to retrofit all the homes in the pocket. We had to help our neighbors to understand the why we were proposing this before we got into the how to do it. They needed to understand why. So we started by canvassing with homeowners, having educational events, having pocket parties in people's kitchens, talking about why we needed to get off the gas. When we were able to, pre-pandemic, we started with a couple of summers of eco fun fairs in our park where we drew a lot of people together. But because we had been doing so much canvassing and so much, almost one-on-one in people's kitchens, there were a lot of people who were helping us to spread the awareness at the eco fairs. And by early 2021, even through the pandemic, we had 130 members in our pocket change committee, and 12 homeowners had already committed to doing these deep retrofits. And by that point, 4 retrofits were already underway.
So then we started the Change Makers program in order to help the 12 homeowners that were interested in doing retrofits and help them move along. The Change Maker program is designed really to provide the support so that homeowners are not on their own in doing this, support from the neighborhood, support from technical advice, and support from peers and other people that are doing the same thing. After I put the heat pump in my house and talked to people about it, many people would say, well, I've got the energy audit, but I really don't know what to do next. And there are a lot of different barriers to moving ahead. So we wanted to make sure that those barriers did not prevent people from doing their retrofit. So we put in a advisory service, which is available at a fixed price from a separate energy advisor, Sarah Grant of Goldfinch Energy, working with us in the pocket. And that provides basically a coaching service through the homeowner's experience from the beginning to the end. Next slide, please. So the advisory service helps homeowners with project management and technical expertise. Many homeowners do not have experience with getting contractors for the kinds of work that's going to need to be done. And sometimes it's hard to find the right contractors. It helps. One of the important things is to create a roadmap. And the roadmap helps to sort out the priorities, the plan, what to do first. It's specific to the homeowner and the home. Different homes are different. Some have had more work done than others on them previously. Some homeowners want to bite off the whole thing at once. Others want to work on it incrementally. And so the roadmap takes the energy audit and adds technical advice and the homeowner's objectives and financial considerations and comes up with a roadmap. And once the homeowner has the roadmap, they can proceed with it quickly, or they can move along and break off pieces of it one at a time and do a more gradual process. The advisory service also helps homeowners to find qualified contractors to arrange the contracts. Right now, this is a bit tricky. There are not enough contractors out there doing this kind of work that are familiar with heat pumps and comfortable working in older homes and dealing with the kinds of situations that are found there. And sometimes you get bids from multiple contractors and they're not really comparable. So all of that's a little bit tricky, and the advisory service can help with that. Applying for financing, knowing how to apply the rebates. What is the best strategy for using those rebates to get the most mileage out of them? And then provide some oversight during the installation in case any problems come up, and make sure the work's done well. And finally, we measure the GHG emissions before and after the work is done based on the utility bills, the homeowner's utility bills, for 1 year before the work and then 2 years after. And that way you can actually see the outcome of the work that was done. So as of this spring, there are 25 homes in the pocket that have either completed or are undertaking retrofits. Some of them are major new builds, some of them are older ones. There's quite a variety. There are 10 heat pump installations completed and more in the works. And they include 2 hydronic systems for hot water systems with radiators. Many people will tell you that that can be done. Paul's home is an example of one where it has been done, and there are others as well. And so there are now 4 homes in the pocket that are off gas completely. In parallel with this, we maintain the project website. Julia is been pioneering this, adding new material all the time, thinking of new things to add, including webinars that we hold from time to time on particular topics. And we've also received some national media attention earlier this year on a number of different CBC programs. And that's been very exciting because many people have contacted us to say that either they or their communities would like to know more. So right now, we're thinking about how this can be reproduced or made available more broadly than in the pocket. And we're just in the process of starting a new not-for-profit organization that will partner with other community groups across Toronto and support them as they work to help their members with their home retrofits. So community groups could be all sorts of things. It could be climate organizations, it could be neighborhood associations, it could be faith groups, it could be employers, any community group that has members that are interested in working together on this. And so the idea is to empower those groups, to give them the tools that they need, the expertise, back them up with expertise in order to help their members.
Great, thanks, Eve. So next, some tips for homeowners, but I just wanted to mention that I've been watching some of the questions that are coming in, and they are great questions. So keep those questions coming, and we'll get to those after the presentation. So first real tip is get organized. There are definitely opportunities for retrofits, opportunities that you should not let go by. One that we've mentioned a couple of times in the homeowner stories is if your furnace or your air conditioning system is aging, definitely plan ahead and definitely plan to get a heat pump replacement rather than a like for like gas appliance for a gas appliance. So plan ahead on that and plan to do the work in the summer when you may be a little warm when you don't have your AC, but that's a whole lot better than being cold when you don't have a furnace. So plan the switch well in advance. Of course, also if you're planning to do a renovation of your house or a rebuild of your house, again, that's the time to make these carbon decisions, these non-carbon decisions. Plan on electrifying your home, plan on putting in extra insulation, plan on doing a good job of air sealing. Don't just build or renovate to the building code minimum. Do better than that. There's a reason why the building code is a minimum. It is the minimum legal standard. So do better than that because we can and we should. And also a lot of people are motivated by wanting to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And if that is your motivator and that is your driver, that's a great one. So, because we all have to do our part. Yeah, so some advice is, share your journey with your neighbors and friends to exchange information. That's really how the pocket change works. It's neighbors helping neighbors, trusted neighbors helping trusting neighbors. So it really helps to get your community involved. And of course, get independent personalized advice. As so many people remark once they get their energy audits, it's all gobbledygook to them. They don't really understand it. So it's this independent roadmap, personalized advice that helps to answer the technical questions, set your priorities, help to find contractors, and even to access the rebates and the financing available. Some energy audits may be incorrect, and thereby their advice is not useful for taking action. So you do have to kind of shop around for a good energy auditor. So ask other people, ask your energy auditors for references. Supplier advice is also often inconsistent with emissions reductions and with building science. So don't necessarily just believe what your suppliers are telling you. Find contractors who support your objectives. Talk to your energy advisor or other homeowners about contractor advice. Be patient. That's a really big one. The process does take time. Post-COVID, there are supply chain issues in everything. So plan well ahead and understand that the process will take time. And if you're renovating, ensure that your architect and contractor both get specialized advice so that they understand the latest technology and the latest building science. And about these retrofits, so the objective is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's don't lose focus on that. Improving energy efficiency doesn't always help. That's kind of a deep dive we could do maybe in another webinar, exactly what that means. Plan affordable actions. Do the pieces, as we said, break off the pieces as you can. Definitely air source heat pumps are the most frequent and the most cost-effective way to lower your emissions. So definitely look very strongly at an air source heat pump. Also, people will tell you that air source heat pumps will not work for radiator heating. Well, as Eve said, my house is one that proves that wrong. So definitely it is possible. The trouble is that at present, there are very few contractors who know how to install them in existing homes. So that's another group of contractors we need to grow. Air sealing is really important, including sealing your ductwork. That's often a very low cost solution and a very effective solution in older homes. Make sure that you're insulating where you need to. A part of the energy audit and part of the roadmap can also be taking thermal images, using a thermal camera to see where the cold spots and where the hot spots on your walls are. Where's heat leaking out? Where is it well insulated? The cold spots on your wall, on your outside wall, are where it's well insulated, and the hot spots are where it's not. So make sure that you find out where those are and make sure you insulate them. And as always, consider the carbon embodied in the materials through their manufacture.
And Paul, we're going to have to wind up because we're at 8:10.
We're just about there. Two more slides.
And here's the last slide with content. While this has been going on, there are a number of other things going on in Toronto. So here are some other resources that may be helpful. There's a Facebook group called the Home Retrofit Forum. It now has, I believe, close to 200 people participating in it. It's an information exchange community, questions, answers. There are some very knowledgeable people who are keeping an eye on it. So that's an excellent resource. The Harbour Village Residents Association has a net zero project, and they have arranged discounts on bulk buys of induction ranges and stovetops and on air source heat pump water heaters. So that, if you're thinking of doing one of those things, is a great resource. And then we have our website at the Pocket Change Project. It's pocketchangeproject.ca, and it's updated all the time with webinars, blogs, retrofit stories, etc. So we hope that you'll take advantage of that. A little word of wisdom that keeps us inspired. When people travel to the past, they worry about changing the present by doing something small in the past. But few people think that they can radically change the future by doing something small in the present. And that helps to motivate us in our project. Here is our email, info@pocketchangeproject.ca. And we would love to hear from you if you're an individual, if you're interested in a group. And finally, thank you very much, Peter, for orchestrating this. Just the questions that have been coming in show how much interest there is in it. And we're really, really pleased to be here. Thank you.
Well, Eve and Paul, that is an amazing presentation. Thank you. You packed a lot into those 30 minutes. You packed an awful lot in. we have a ton of questions, as you're aware. I wanted to say to participants, we are using the Q&A function to gather questions and comments. We aren't going to be using the hands raised function or chat, just so that we can juggle everything at our end. I'm going to go through as many questions as I can between Eve and Paul over the next 15 minutes or so. And the first question I had is, I had an audit done, but found the next step completely confounding for a presumably smart college-educated couple. We couldn't understand the next step on the government website, and our consultant who did the audit kind of disappeared. Any advice or suggestions for someone who can help? Eve, do you want to take that on?
Sure. I mean, that's exactly the reason why we're doing what we're doing, is that it's a very common experience. And as you say, many people who are in positions of leadership and, you would expect to be able to do this still have this challenge. So we suggest finding somebody who can help you with the planning. As we mentioned, we've been working with Goldfinch. There are other architects out there that may be knowledgeable. There may be energy audit advisors that have that, they go above and beyond just the audit. But by all means, do try and find someone with that expertise to work with you as a partner. There's masses of information on the internet as well, but you could spend a long time going down rabbit holes, and it really helps to have somebody to package it all in a way that applies to your situation.
Thank you. Another question, are some heat pumps noisy? I saw a piece on TV France News that implied neighbors get upset about unbearable noise. What has been your experience? Paul, do you want to take that one?
Sure, thanks, Peter. So my experience with heat pumps and noise from all the ones that I have observed so far is that they are quieter than central air conditioners, than the outdoor unit of central air conditioners. Now, I have heard stories of heat pumps that are quite noisy outdoors, and that has been traced to a poor installation job. So it can be fixed when they are noisy. If they are noisy, that's probably an indication that something has been done wrong on the installation, and it needs to be fixed.
Okay, thank you. The next one.
And can be fixed.
And can be fixed. That's a very important point.
Yeah.
Everything I've read says heat pumps don't warm houses well enough in cold climates like ours. So why do they work here? Either of you, who would like to dive on that one?
Well, heat pump technology has improved a great deal in the last 3 to 5 years. And as there's been more and more experience, we're demonstrating that, yes, indeed, they can work down to temperatures in the low -20s, like -25. And beyond that, it's possible to install a supplementary heating unit, which is either an electric supplementary heating unit, well, usually is included in the installation of the heat pump. So some people are installing those and others are not. But they are definitely working in Toronto, and we're finding, when we started, we thought, well, you have to insulate your house to the extreme to make an air source heat pump work. We're finding that's not the case. And some of the examples that we gave today, the houses have had very little additional insulation done, and the heat pump is doing just fine. So the proof is really in the experience.
Yeah, I'll go to the next question, but I'll just say, having looked this up recently, about half the houses in Finland are now working on cold climate air source heat pumps. So if you can do it in Finland, you can certainly do it in Toronto. How do you get an energy audit, and what does it cost? And can you tell us about the heat pump costs? Paul, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure, Peter, no problem. So getting an energy audit is, you look it up on the internet, and you'll find a list of energy auditors. Unfortunately, as we've said many times this evening, all energy auditors are not created equal. So you definitely want to, when you're talking to an energy audit and thinking about hiring them, you want to talk to them about a post-energy audit roadmap. If they don't know what that is, then my advice would be, go to the next energy auditor and talk to them, because you really need the roadmap, as we said. The cost is about a little more than $600 for the first audit, and less than that for the post renovation audit, and you need both of them to get rebates. You have to show in the second audit that things have improved substantially, and you'll want to know that yourself anyway. And there is a rebate from the federal government for those energy audits, so it brings the price down, almost to nothing, not to nothing, but it makes the energy audit very affordable. From the heat pumps or cost of heat pumps, from those that I have seen and participated in, when you add in the rebates again that we can get from the federal government for those, it works out to about the same as the cost of replacing your gas furnace and your central air conditioning. So if you need to replace those anyway, with the rebates, the cost is coming to just about the same.
Okay. Next question I'm going to take. Will Ontario electricity continue to be carbon clean? I hear about gas plants being put in for electricity generation. And since I'm the energy critic, I will say to you, in Ontario right now, our electricity supply is 92% carbon emission free. It is quite correct to be concerned that the current government is planning to expand the number of gas-fired power generators in Ontario. But we don't expect that will flip us back to a majority carbon emitting system. No one has seen final numbers, but I would guess we'll probably go to 85% carbon free. So it is still worthwhile making the conversion, but you're right to be concerned, and that's going to become a bigger political issue in Ontario in the next little while. Okay. Next question. Has your group come up with a list of trusted energy auditors and installation experts? How do you find a certified energy auditor? Paul just gave one clue. Can you provide a list of good house energy auditors? Eve, I'm going to turn this one over to you if you don't mind.
This is quite a challenge because there are relatively few of them at the moment, and we have not come up yet with a method of coming up with a list. They would need to be sort of screened and certified. But what we're looking for really is testimonials from people who've had work done, who can give a reference. I think that's the best way of finding them is talk to people who've had this done. If you don't know them themselves, we can probably connect you with other people as well and find who they had do the work for them. So it's really word of mouth in a very tight market right now.
Okay. For Paul, do you have a generator to provide for power blackouts?
No.
In a word? Yeah, I hear you.
That's
you want to expand on that?
That's the short answer. The longer answer is that prior to having an all-electric air source heat pump, I didn't have a generator for backup power then either, because my gas furnace, my gas boiler wouldn't run without electricity either. So I didn't worry about it then. Why worry about it now?
Yeah,
is my attitude.
Well, and I will just add, when we went through the 2013 ice storm, what you found is exactly what I was getting from people all over Toronto-Danforth. People who had gas furnaces that required electricity to operate had to abandon their homes because they didn't have that electricity. So you don't dramatically change your position by moving away from a gas stove. My advice to many people would be insulate as best you can to minimize heat loss when it gets cold. And that leads to another question. In order to electrify your appliances, did you have to upgrade breaker panels? And if you have an electric car, do you have to upgrade? Do either of you want to take that one on?
I'll take this one because I think it's aimed squarely at me, because it's exactly my situation. Just to follow up on your answer to your add-on to the last question, Peter, though, in that 2013 ice storm, we found both in my house and a lot of our clients' houses, me being a renovation architect, the people who had well air-sealed and well insulated houses were able to stay warm for days and days and days longer than anybody else. So you're absolutely right. The insulation and the air sealing is the key to staying warm in a power outage. When I when my house was still on a gas boiler, and I got an electric car, two electricians told me that I would need to upgrade my panel from 100 amp to 200 amp to run the electric car. I didn't like the sound of that. I didn't believe it. I don't know why I didn't believe it. I did no science, no research. I just didn't believe it. And I found an electrician who agreed with me. I've had no problem powering my electric car with 100 amp service. Then when I got an air source heat pump, I was also told by two electricians that I would need to upgrade my power supply. I didn't want to believe that either. I went back to the same electrician, finally found him again, and said, let's try it out and see. Went through a whole winter charging my car and running my air source heat pump on 100 amps. Changed to an induction stove, told the same thing again. We're also running an induction stove and an electric car and air source heat pump, all on 100 amps, no problems yet.
Huh, interesting. So, next question, what is the average cost of Sarah Grant's advisory service? Does the advisory service help homeowners find a reliable energy assessment service? Eve, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So Sarah's cost depends on the scope of what you want. If you're just looking at an air source heat pump, it ranges in the $450 to $500 range. If you are looking for a more comprehensive retrofit, it's closer to $750 or $800. And if you want her to be actively involved in the installation, then she has an hourly rate that she charges for supplementary services. But she will help you to find a good energy auditor. In fact, they do energy audits themselves, and there's some benefit to that because then she knows the house intimately before she starts working on the roadmap. And she also has a pretty good number of contractors that she's worked with in the past that she can bring in as well. So in our opinion, it's very good value. So, these are big investments and you want to do the right ones.
Okay. Here's a question and comment. Thanks for holding this. I want a ground source heat pump. Official info sheets suggest a cost of 20 to 35, and I'm assuming 20 to 35,000, but with more research, it seems closer to 80,000. Wow. The city will need a far higher incentive to make ground source heat pumps even slightly economically attractive. Would love any thoughts on or contacts with people who have expertise or experience with ground source heat pumps. Thanks. Paul, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no problem, Peter. Yes, so again, putting on my other hat, my architect hat, I did help a lot of homeowners, in the mid 2000s to install ground source heat pumps. It was the only way to go all electric then. We didn't have the air source heat pump technology then that we have now. Now an air source heat pump will do all the same things that a ground source heat pump will do for you, just at a much, much, much lower cost. So that $80,000 is not out of range at all. So it's my advice would be look closely at an air source heat pump instead of a ground source heat pump today.
Okay. I'm going to try and squeeze in two questions and then we need to have wrap up comments. What's available for low income homeowners? Yeah, I look puzzled as well because I have to say, I think this is part of the equation that has not been dealt with by governments, and it really does need to be dealt with. It's a very big problem. Low income and lower middle income, these are big expenses. And they'd be big expenses if you didn't convert. If you had to replace your furnace and air conditioner, it'd be a burden as well. Eve, Paul? No.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's clearly something needs to be addressed.
Yeah. No, it's very frustrating that it is not. I think this will be our last question. My apologies to all of you. We've got quite a few and we've had close to 170 people here this evening. Our house is already gas-free. We have a forced air electric furnace. We're in a war house, so our insulation is non-existent on the main floor. Are there rebates for insulation and window replacement? Paul, you're nodding, so you get to answer that.
Okay, sure, no problem, Peter. Yes, there are rebates for insulation and window replacement, Again, congrats, your house is already all electric, great. But your forced air electric furnace is really like a giant toaster. It is using 3 times the electricity that an air source heat pump would. So also look strongly at replacing your forced air electric furnace with a cold climate air source heat pump. Your electricity bills will drop.
Okay, with that, Eve, Paul, if I could have closing comments from you. Eve, you get to go first because you got to go second at the beginning.
Well, it's great to see the interest in this today, and thank you so much for Peter for putting this on. This is really one of the concrete things that a person can do to make a difference, and you see the results immediately. So encourage you very much, if you're concerned about the climate at all, to do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul.
Thank you, Peter, as well. I would just like, as closing comment, I'd just like to quote, what is popularly known as a Chinese proverb. Those who say that it can't be done should get out of the way of those who are already doing it. So a lot of the questions, come from the information which is out there, which is telling people that this can't be done. Our homeowner stories and my own experience and my own not believing everything that I'm told definitely proves that this can be done, must be done, and should be done.
Okay, I want to thank you both. Fabulous panelists, excellent presentation. The number of questions we got just indicated how much you've piqued people's curiosity and how you're dealing with the things that people want dealt with. For all of you participants out there, thank you for taking the time this evening to join us. Thanks for those very high quality questions. We're going to be posting this video on YouTube. The questions that you've asked that we haven't gotten to, we'll try and get back to or post answers so they're generally available, because you've asked questions that I think almost everyone wants to have the information for. To my staff, Elaine and Rob, to Julia, who was the technical person behind the scene, making the PowerPoint go. Thank you, the 3 of you. You made us on the panel look pretty good, actually. I'm very appreciative. And to all of you, have a great night and look forward to talking to you again. Take care, everyone.